Hey, I'm on a little early tonight. I couldn't wait to get this going. Picked up my new book today. This is my teacher in Salt Lake City. Really, really fortunate to have him in town. He's the owner of Green Thread Herbs. They built me a nice little care package last month. I don't work downtown anymore. I left my job of 15 years and used to go into the herb shop almost every Friday after one of our recordings. I used to do a lot of production that was called live to tape, so we'd just try and get it all done in one shoot, one go for my public television career. That was really interesting. I got to do a lot of different things, and we can talk more about that. I have some interesting stories. But first thing this morning, I got up and I read this whole book. And at the time this was published, this author was living in Salt Lake City. And I'd never read this book before, but gosh, timely as ever. And I swear, I just discovered Professor Hamamoto, and he was talking about a book jumping off the shelf at him. And this one jumped off at me. And I read it in a whole day, or just in the morning. It's only 170 pages. And it's big type. It's kids. It's a kid's reader. And really just another dystopic novel future. In fact, I thought this was interesting. So this was published in 1997. And there is a summary printed on this page. In a future world where global contamination has necessitated limited human contact, 3 young people with unique genetically engineered abilities are teamed up to wage a war in virtual reality. So, science fiction, I've always kind of been a fan. Somewhat reluctantly, perhaps. Like, I'd have my dad or my brother or a friend, suggest something. My husband suggest something, and I wouldn't really be that interested. And then I'd give it a shot and get into it. But yeah, this is a series, so I may try and find the rest in the series just because I'm curious. And that woman, Gloria, wrote a lot of books. And interestingly, she wrote a lot of mysterious stories about the national parks. She has a history about that. And, I think during COVID, a lot of people got into, like, South Park makes fun of, like, murder porn. And women have always loved murder mysteries. I have a huge collection of Agatha Christie books inspired by my grandmother's collection, which I didn't get to actually acquire many of her books, but I did. I did purchase a number of my own old paperbacks from this old bookstore when they were closing, sort of in memory of my grandmother. But yeah, I've been reading a lot about dystopic futures, and then I've also been trying to get into these studies of plants. I'm doing a book club on this book. And this just came out. You can find it on Amazon. Josh had a few copies of it in his shop, and he didn't sign it, but he did hand it to me, which is, I think, amazing. And I've been taking classes from him for years now. He's helped me build my bookcase. He's helped me build my own apothecary at home with wonderfully sourced herbs. And he really introduces this concept of simplicity, and I love that. It's intuitive. So that's what I've been just opening my heart up to, uh, is paying attention to the signs around me. And so I wanted to touch on a couple of those things really quick. I'm not sure that I have a whole lot more to say tonight, actually, but I've been inspired to read, so I wanted to update you with some of the things that I've been checking out. But just to touch a little bit on this book, The Virtual War, and what's going on now. I'm definitely going through that at home, where I have my own addictions to technology. I'm classically always on always have the phone with me. Um, and I've been practicing turning it off and leaving it aside. But I also use it as my primary source for consuming all of my media, which lately, frankly, it's been a lot of YouTube videos. And I continue to go down the rabbit hole and kind of curate the content that I'm consuming. And things are jumping out at me. I'm getting some really good suggestions for other people's somewhat obscure channels and content. And so with that, I'm also challenging myself to actually read physical books. And one of my interests is really in this concept of what's lost in translation. And so I found these two books in my collection, and I thought they were just a really good example of, what's the soul of a book, of a story, and then what do we translate? It's pretty interesting. And another really stark example of that, I wish I had them on hand, but I have piles of books on my bed right now in front of me. But I have this old dictionary this thick, and then compared to a modern dictionary only this thick. And you can see it on your phone now. When you go to type in an obscure word, it'll spell check it. I get spell checked on Google all the time, and then I'm looking at the word and typing it, like consilience. Google hasn't learned that word yet. So there's just things that I'm starting to pay attention to that are really affirming and pushing forward my exploration. So I'm really interested in that concept of what's lost in translation. And I got some book suggestions on some old stories that you can go back to as a reference, short reads that frame the narrative for, like, what is Western culture? What are our values based off of? And there can be a lot lost in translation. If you're trying to read the Bible and have any semblance of understanding of what it's trying to say, you're going to want to read the New International Version before the King James. Because the King James, that language, it's not familiar to us, right? Now, I just heard about this. There's now like a LGBT LGBTQ friendly Bible translation. Okay, so maybe it omits like an entire book, like of Leviticus or something like that. I'm not sure what that's about specifically, but I thought that was interesting because yeah, in the time of every story that we may be familiar with being retold, uh, it's interesting. You know, it's like the old complaints of people that loved the book and they hate the movie, right? And why do you hate it? Because there's something lost there. In that translation of medium, you lose the richness of the reading of those words, that poetry. That's the magic of the word. Um, and so um, it's likened to the Quran, but it must be read in a certain way. And sure, you could translate it, but it's not the same. It's not the spirit of it. Um, Same with Hebrew and Greek. And so if you're going to explore these topics, you really need to be paying attention to who's the author. You know, is it an unabridged edition? Is it, when was it first published? Can you find the most original version of a story? And I'm going to reread the old version, Collodi of Pinocchio. Um, of course, it's translated to English. I don't speak Italian, but it's the pre-Disney cartoon version of Pinocchio that we know. And now there's the new uh, Guillermo del Toro hacked the name. Sorry. His new film Pinocchio, which I have yet to see, but I feel like a lot of my childhood senses are renewed. Like I had lost a lot of interest in modern film, and there was nothing that excited me to want to see anymore. I was like disillusioned with that stuff. I was over it, but now I'm starting to get excited again. There's films that my kids want to watch that I'm interested in seeing what they're consuming media wise and entertainment wise. But yeah, there's some things I'm actually excited for that are coming out. So we'll be talking about more of this books, film, pop culture stuff, and as it relates to some of the other maybe ancient studies. And I'm just happy to have you here. So we'll talk soon.